it's hard to exist, even on an any-day basis. This whole thing is just draining the life right out of us, and it's hard because you try to do stuff, you try to do it right, you work really hard, and it just seems like there's nothing we can do. There's just nothing. It's like we don't exist. It's like we're the ones that have done all the violations, but when you try to talk to somebody or ask or anything, it's like nobody even wants to listen to us. You can walk into these courts and this whole other world that I guess now we've learned about, and it's like we don't exist. They just are running right over top of us, and they just do whatever they want, and they seem to know the name of the game, and we don't know it. So the light for us is the fact that now we realize that we do have rights, that as a man and a woman, we can work hard, and what is ours is ours. And we're finding that this is an avenue for us to say, no, stop it, stop bullying us, stop pushing us, stop taking from us. Treat us fair, treat me right. I mean, you don't sleep at night. You don't do anything anymore because you're just so afraid, and so we don't know where to turn. So we're going through the process. The process is not done yet. The process is getting very hard. We're trying to learn. I really know I have been taught my whole life of a whole different system, to bow down and obey. The government is good and the police are always right. And I've lived a year of realizing that is not the situation. And we know we're right. I mean, we know what we've done is, we're trying to get out of it. Are we going to get out of it? I believe there is light at the end of the tunnel in the way that we are doing it now. Definitely there are people listening. The fact that we're being intimidated and threatened, and somebody knows something's up. And so will we get out the other end? We'll stay together. We'll fight this, because I do believe it is important that I have rights. I think it's important, right?
Yes, we have rights. We just didn't know we did.
Yeah.
We were told we didn't.
Today's date is November the 7th, 2019, Thursday. I am here with Kathy and Brent of the Manary family, and this is a recorded interview depicting and showing to the public who this Manary family is and what has occurred against them over the last 10 months and still ongoing. So I would like to introduce you first to Brent and to Kathy, and if you could introduce yourselves and just explain a little bit of background of your family and your farm first, and then we'll walk everybody through what has occurred over the last 10 months up to this point.
Well, I'm Brent and Kathy. We've been married 37 years. Very proud of that. We have 4 great children, all educated, and we've been farming for 35 years. All we do is work. We enjoy what we do. We obviously could make more money doing something else. We're not interested in that. It's all about family for us, and Kathy's done an excellent job of making sure our kids know what hard work is all about, and we're very proud of that. So we grow tobacco. We've been growing tobacco for 30 years. Both our parents were tobacco farmers. That's how we met. We're in different counties. Didn't know each other before we were 20 years old. Her father had predeceased a few years, and they were ready to sell. Her mother was. So my father and parents, we bought her farm. That's how we met. And love at first sight, I guess. 37 years, here we are. So that's how we all got started. And so we've been farming for more than 30 years. Tobacco has been our main stock. We also grow peppers, cucumbers, asparagus, corn and beans, and squash, pumpkins. We've tried everything and continue to make a balanced farm income. And you don't put all your eggs in one basket. So it's worked well for us. But the last few years, the Ministry of Finance has taken over the raw leaf tobacco division after the government, we'll say government, squashed the tobacco board and took all their power away and decided to take it over themselves. Well, the Ministry of Finance, raw leaf tobacco division, the first time they sent people out, inspectors they called them, they carried guns. They're coming to farms who may not have a gun or wish to use them only to shoot a rodent, and they're coming out with guns and trying to tell us how to operate our business. Very, very intimidating.
Full SWAT gear, always a vest on, as if we're going to cause them some kind of harm while they're there.
Yeah, always come unannounced. They've given themselves the power to do that. They don't need a warrant. They show up, demand you shut down your whole operation for the hour or two that they're there inspecting. They haven't got a clue what they're inspecting, but they've made up rules, somebody in Toronto, of how you should run your operation, which we're not sure how that happens, but they've given themselves the power to do that.
We don't know the rules of the game, and we continue to ask them, what are the rules to the game? Because this is something we've done for 30 years. It's a legal product. We've grown legal products. Tobacco has a lot of stuff behind it, but we've always grown tobacco. And when the ministry came in, and they have all kinds of new rules books that they're playing with, but they don't tell us what the new rules are. So they would come on the property and, oh, well, you're not allowed to throw that there. And I've thrown it there for 30 years. And if you don't tell me why I can't throw it there, then you should first tell me.
So what they're actually doing is they're administrating property without right.
Most definitely, all the way along, they come with a preconceived idea that my property is their property. That's how they come at us, is that when they walk on the farm and at any point in time they can look at anything, they can go through anything, and they count the bales, it's their property. They're counting their bales, and they're not their bales. I've worked hard to grow that crop, and that's my property, but they believe they can do anything with that property, to the point that they threaten you. We've had them destroying, they believe they're not, but I mean, they come in with their wet boots and they walk all over our product, and it damages the product. But when you try to ask them to step off the product because they're damaging it, they right away threaten you and tell you, if you don't let me do what I want, and I can move your tobacco, I can lose your license, it's always that threat without, if you need to come and count my bales, if that's what the new rules are in this game, no problem. Come and count the bales. But that's not at all how they've addressed it. And as we tried to grow into a different business where we were actually going to ship our own product, the rules are not the same. So the rules that were for the other companies have always been different for our company. And we were even told on numerous occasions that, you have to have your sticker a certain way, because yes, it's different than all the other companies, but it's because you're a small company and that's how we want to do it. They never came to me in the beginning and said your sticker needs to have this, this, and this on it, because the book that they handed out said a sticker needs to have a date, an identification on the farm, and that's what had to be on those bales. And so we made our own stickers and we did that. Then they came at us and said, no, those stickers are illegal stickers. Well, you've been inspecting them for the last 2 years. Why wouldn't you have told me 2 years ago, the first time you've seen my sticker, why would you not have said, okay, this sticker needs to have this, or it needs to be, in a purple page, or whatever you needed, come and tell me.
How many shipments did you do with all the stickers? And I imagine things changed along the ways in those fierce little things.
We shipped approximately 20 loads without issue.
Without any trespass.
Without any trespass, without any issue. Everything was done exactly the way they wanted. They accepted every load. They inspect every load and the paperwork before it can leave our farm.
Okay, so then what happened then on October the
30th.
30th?
So 5 days before the 30th, on a Thursday, we had a load of shipment ready to go. It was going to the Port of Montreal. And then the buyer actually was shipping it to Egypt, direct from our farm to the Port of Montreal to Egypt.
And who was the buyer?
R&R Global.
R&R Global, thank you.
So we had previously shipped the load earlier in the month, no issues. Everything was good. This load, they stopped us from shipping it on Thursday. We don't know why. And they told us our paperwork's incorrect and to refile it. We didn't understand that. So we refiled it 3 business days, one of their rules, so it couldn't ship until the 30th. No problem, which was a Tuesday. So the inspector came, the container was still there that we had loaded previously. They inspected all the paper, good to go. Off it went. We get a call earlier the next morning that container had been seized in Quebec and taken by the Quebec police. We had another load going out on the Thursday, which was November 2nd. It also going to the same destination, same paperwork, all approved by Ontario.
So when you first found this out, you contacted obviously the man or woman who's acting at the Ministry of Finance that's involved with this service program that they provide, the raw leaf tobacco program you spoke to?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and who was that man that you spoke to?
We spoke to Dion Cousins was the main lady that involved.
The main woman.
Yeah,
okay.
And at that time when she said she didn't know anything about it.
So she didn't know anything about the product being, your property being seized in Quebec?
That's what she stated.
Correct. And what did you find out shortly thereafter, or not shortly after, but a few months later, I believe?
A month later we found out she was the initiator to have it seized. She called Dean Eastman, another high-ranking official in the Ministry of Finance. He called a judge in Quebec, he got a telewarrant to seize that tobacco because they decided somehow that it was going to an illegal market in Quebec.
And where did you see this proof that that's who made the phone call?
We got it from the Quebec police.
The Quebec police. In a police report that was
Yes,
created?
in a filed police report against the trucking company in Quebec.
And this is after both Dion and the other gentleman you were speaking to, any agents at the Ministry of Finance had stated that they had nothing to do with the seizure?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, after the second load got seized, then we
What date was that on, Brent, the second load?
November 2nd,
November 2nd.
2018.
Okay.
We also, after that, we received a letter from the Ministry of Finance that we are no longer allowed to ship tobacco to R&R Global. So they squashed our contract of 1.6 million pounds, basically crippling our business and shutting us down.
And what was the reason that they gave for that trespass?
They believe, well, their reason was that R&R Global was not basically a legitimate company for us to be selling tobacco to, even though Ontario should only be concerned or control the geographic borders of Ontario. Once it leaves Ontario, what does Ontario have to do with it? That's the part we couldn't figure out.
And when you say the word Ontario, you're referring to the service corporation called Ontario?
Yes.
Right, so we have the distinction between the Service Corporation of Ontario and your fellow men and women who are acting in supposed to be these honorable capacities, serving the public to help us create and generate wonderful product from this country.
Yes.
Okay, so you've had the second one seized now, and what happened after that?
Well, after that, we, again, only through...
They said that we needed to prove
that R&R Global was a...
we had to get their corporate papers basically and give
yes.
it to the Ministry of Ontario. Wanted us to go to a company that was beyond us. Our buyer was selling to them, and we had to ask them for their corporate papers from another country to give to the Ontario government to prove that it was some kind of a legal transaction, I guess.
They asked us to provide documentation from the Egyptian government
Yes.
to say that the company that bought it in Egypt and the buyer from R&R Global were legitimate companies, businesses in Egypt.
And if we couldn't do that, we were not allowed, if we didn't provide them with the paperwork, we're no longer allowed to ship to R&R Global.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you did have a prior bill of lading that demonstrated that these transactions had gone through, that,
Yes.
that there were actual
Yes.
buyers,
Yes.
and the
Yes.
money. Can you just explain to the people at home that when a truck shows up to your property, how that product leaves your property, and is there a deposit that's made on that, and then when does that property that you've grown not become your property anymore through the course of the transactions?
So when you're dealing with an international company, they won't accept, and it's not allowed in the federal government, it's always the federal license holder's product until it reaches international territory, which is considered the Port of Montreal, Port of Vancouver, our port. Once it's inside the gate, it's considered international territory. That's when that company, the buying company, is declared the owner.
Declare the owner.
So our license, as a Canadian, our license held that product, even though it really, in truth, it really wasn't our product anymore because they had already bought it from us at the farm level. But the government can't have another company moving a product through Canada without a license. And we're the holders of the license,
Yeah.
so in the government's eyes, we're the holder of the product until it hits port.
And what have you learned now about licenses?
That we really don't need a license to transport our own product on a public highway. We are public, the roads are public, it's my product.
It's our,
That's right. It's your property.
it's
my
our property,
property,
we can administer
yes.
our property and sell it to another man or a woman.
That's right.
And that's our right.
It's that simple that
it is that
no
simple.
man or woman
Yeah.
can administrate property without right.
right.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
And no one owns this tobacco other than you and Brent and family, right? It's
Yeah.
your year of hard work and labor. That's your property. So
On a 4-lane highway in Quebec, where the QPP said the tobacco was going to an illegal buyer, they said reserve, Indian Reserve possibly, but they stopped it on a 4-lane highway.
right,
It's like stopping it in Ontario on the 401
right.
and declaring you're taking that to an illegal market and we're going to confiscate it on you.
And the police report doesn't say that it's raw leaf tobacco.
No, it doesn't.
The police report states that the trucks are stopped and seized carrying contraband
and
cigarettes. Well, it's not contraband cigarettes, it's raw leaf tobacco. It's basically, it's primed off a plant, it's cured, and it's put in a little package, basically a little cardboard box to keep it together.
Right.
And that's what was on the truck. That's what was being shipped.
What happened to the truck drivers and their vehicles?
Everything was seized.
So it was placed in a compound?
Placed in the compound, we asked through legal means to view the trucks and the product, because tobacco is a perishable product. Sitting in a metal container in the wintertime, it's going to rot.
When we first are doing this, we are thinking still that we can go to a lawyer and the lawyer is going to help us. We learned very quickly that the lawyer was emptying our pocket, doing absolutely nothing for us. Quebec stands alone in that we couldn't even communicate within that court. So the language barrier became a huge issue. And so it isn't, I guess, because we're so frustrated with what's going on and no one's listening to us, they just take our product. No one tells us where it is. We can't have eyes on it. We know that this product is, it's basically perishing. There is no way that it can stay inside of a container without breathing
Right.
and be of any value to anybody after that.
The trucks have been seized, the product's been compounded, you went through how many lawyers? You retained a lawyer first?
We went through 2 lawyers in Quebec.
2 lawyers in
The
Quebec.
first one was recommended to us from a lawyer in Ontario.
Right.
All he wanted to do was, all he ever did was ask the questions that I could have asked the police myself.
Right.
When he wanted to have a hearing every couple of weeks, I said, I don't want any hearings. I want to go to trial. I want to get my product back and get my property back, because we need it before it's, once I forced him on that issue, he quit.
Right.
I got an email from him saying, we don't see things eye to eye, obviously, because I paid him $10,000 and he quit.
Okay, and you went through how many lawyers until you recognized that there was a problem with your understanding with the law?
We went through 3 lawyers.
3 lawyers. And how much collectively did you pay the 3 lawyers?
Close to $30,000.
You mentioned to me, do you want to elaborate that this license that you were using to work through expired in December of 2018?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
The Ontario one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so at that point you were what then? No longer...
No longer we were, I
We
guess.
no longer affiliated with the Minister of Finance. We were no longer growing tobacco. We were no longer selling tobacco.
Right.
They had basically stopped our business. They had stopped our livelihood. I mean, that's how our whole life, that's how we make our money. I can't go out and be a lawyer or any, I am a tobacco farmer. I mean,
Right.
that's what we are. We're farmers. And tobacco was a crop that we could make money on in order to put food on the table. And they stopped that.
We touched on, but when we realize how crooked this is, we, through a lawyer, sent a letter to Dion Cousins, Ministry of Finance, telling them, asking them how they allowed this seizure to happen, or what involvement they had in it when they approved the load to leave, both loads to leave from our property. Their inspector was there, said, yeah, you're good to go.
Paperwork has to be given to the ministry 3 days before we even book this shipment. So all the paperwork has to first be sent in, they view it, if anything's wrong, then it comes back to us and we have to get it back to them. It has to be 3 days before that load leaves. So they had all this paperwork, and it had been the same paperwork that we'd been doing for 4 years. It was all that same paperwork. They said, yes, it's good. We have to tell them exactly when the load is being loaded so that they can have their inspector there, eyes on to make sure what goes on the truck is what we say. They view every bale, they look at the stickers, they record. I have to tell them exactly which bales are on there, and then they would record what bales were on there. So everybody knows exactly what's on the truck when it leaves. The inspectors are there.
The point of the corruption, we started to realize there was corruption, was when we asked the ministry what was wrong, what involvement they had, or how to help us with the seizure in Quebec. They said they had no knowledge of the seizure. Okay, we accepted that. But then when we got information from Quebec that had Dean Eastman's name on it, he got a telewarrant from a lawyer or a judge in Quebec to get the seizure. We then sent that letter, that information, to Ministry of Finance, Dion Cousins, and the response we got back was, oh, we're allowed to work with them when we think there's an illegal activity going on. So she lied the first time when she said she had no involvement, had no knowledge of it. Then the second time she lied, basically, because she's saying she thought there was illegal involvement. Then why did she let the tobacco leave our farm?
They had an inspector there and they were talking on the phone. So if there's anybody who thinks something's wrong,
Why would they? That's entrapment.
why do you in January is where we first go to our first landowners meeting, where we start to realize that there's some corruption here. We're not really understanding what's going on. And we hear of a landowners meeting up north that we decide maybe we need to go and just listen and hear if there's something going on that maybe we haven't been taught in school. Maybe we are being a little bit blindsided here and being very naive, which I think after the first meeting when we walked away, we thought, wow, are we ever stupid?
Well,
At least I felt stupid.
We thought two things. Either we're really stupid or these guys are way out there. One or the other. And it turns out, as more as we've learned, and now we've met Christopher in August, that things aren't the way they seem. And when we were done with the Ministry of Finance as of December 31st, 2018, they still harassed us in 2019. We've got several fines, one for $350,000, 2 other fines for $2,000 apiece.
They continue to send me paperwork.
And threats of a $1.25 million fine, even though we're not involved with them.
Yeah. And they continue to send, one of the requirements under the licensing is on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis you have to send in paperwork. Well, when December 31st came and we no longer are part of this licensing thing, we don't fill out the paperwork anymore. And so now we're being fined still for not filling out paperwork. Well,
you're not part of their program.
I'm not part of their program.
It ended in December of
It
18,
ended on
right?
December 31st. So, I mean, we've sent it back. We've told them, like, you know, we write right on it. Like, we don't belong, we don't hold a license.
And then realize to the landowners that that's not the way to go, because they can't help us.
Okay.
So me and my daughter, well, Kathy and I and our daughter, Cassandra, decided we're gonna do it ourselves. And so far we've just been arguing, not getting anywhere, or up to that point until we've met you. Now we've learned how to file paperwork properly, and now we're working towards that.
We were in a legal system, and they were just running over us. I mean,
Correct.
to the point that, I mean, you couldn't even talk. I mean, you're not allowed to be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. You know, we're not under. Brent kept wanting to be under oath or something. They were just They were just doing whatever they wanted, and we had no idea what they were doing.
But when you met me, what was the first step that we did? Once I acquired all the writings to understand this trespass that's occurred.
First thing we do is corrected our name, and after that first meeting, my head was just exploding how much information you gave to me that I struggled with, because that's not what I was taught.
Right. So what you were shown in short was your understanding the unlawful conversion of your name that occurs when we are all born, and what the birth certificate represents, that corporation, a legal persona,
capital letter,
does not apply to you. You had nothing to do with its creation, but all your life you believe that was you and your identification.
Yeah.
How do you respond to you with those 12 registered communications?
No, other than, no.
We did get one.
We did get a response from Dion Cousins, who told us to stop harassing her people.
We wrote that letter it was August 27th, I believe, of 2019, that was dated to them, and we followed up with how many notices to both of them, again, to address this when they were not responding.
Everyone got 3.
Everyone got 3 notice, and then we were left with no choice after a 4th communication, who was also copied, for the record, on these communications to Rod and to Doug.
The head of the OPP.
And what's that man's name?
Thomas Creek.
Thomas Creek, that's correct. And Thomas, did he respond at any time after he bared witness to the 4 notices, the 3 notices that followed?
No.
And Thomas received all 3 fax communications following up with Rod and Doug to address this on the honorable side. So he was fully aware that these people were not responding to any of these communications, and he was also well aware of that the OPP provides the enforcement side for the Ministry of Finance. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so when they sent those documents to everybody and nothing was responded to, and then we receive a letter from one of his underlings, Thomas at the OPP, how did you feel when you saw that they belittled what was verified facts of the theft of your property, which has occurred, the loss, all this wrong and harms occurring to you, and he basically belittled that to one word as if it was just concerns you were having?
We were very upset.
Yeah.
Very upset.
Very upset that we were nothing.
That's right. And we immediately responded back to Thomas, and we required a face-to-face meeting with him on this, because you have also shared with me, as you spoke to the top of this interview, that this is happening to not just you in your areas, it's happening to all the farmers. There's an enormous amount of trespass and wrong and harm that's occurring out there that the people don't know that's going on.
Yeah.
And did Thomas ever respond to you after that?
No.
No, we've heard no response. So what did we do on September the 17th?
We filed a claim.
We filed a claim. And where did we file that claim?
St. Thomas Superior Court.
St. Thomas Superior Court. And what was the capacity of this claim in the court?
The claim was under the Manary Court and common law.
That's right. So when you filed this paperwork, did you have any problems at the courthouse filing the paperwork?
I don't think they knew what they were accepting, and it took several attempts and writing, and luckily your quick thinking was able to get them to accept it.
So we'll clarify for the writing so everyone understands. When we actually presented the court clerk with the filing, there was no problem. They took it right away, correct?
Yes.
What you're referring to, the communications back and forth, this was when we were originally trying to access the court on September the 17th under a private prosecution. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's how we originally went to the courthouse, to begin the process to privately prosecute these wrongdoers who are trespassing against your property. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. It was the communications that were going back and forth between myself And the woman that we learned later, whose name was Sherry, was acting as the justice of the peace, who is required and charged with overseeing any private prosecutions. She was not allowing us to see her until there was paperwork filled out. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what did you learn from that process in watching how I carried myself in accessing the courthouse properly?
Well, we did it very carefully and very calmly and very honorably. And they were trying to force us to fill out their forms, which we don't need to do.
And why is that? What happens when people, now that you know, when you fill out any of these forms and use them at the courthouse, which they supply, what does that automatically do?
That puts you in their jurisdiction.
A legal proceeding, correct?
A legal proceeding.
That's right. And
You're under their thumb.
That's waited for, how long was it, 2.5 hours?
Yeah, at least 2.5.
2.5 hours, because Sherry was involved with other court matters, which we fully understood. We don't expect court staff to just drop everything instantly when the man or the woman appears at that court, but we are there for them to provide a service to us, and this was a very serious trespass that's occurred. So finally, Sherry brought you in after the third communication that I wrote in the lobby to her, addressing our right to access this public courthouse, and that we do not require to fill out these forms in order to move our claim in court. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what did Sherry do? Did she then see us?
She eventually seen us, yes.
Yes. And when we went into the court then, we were asked to come in when she was, I guess, on a break. On the piece of paper that was the third communication that was sent to, it was a notice that I wrote in the lobby there. There were two names that are at the very bottom of that paper that we've shown, that will show people here on the website that's there. What were the two names that were there, Brent?
Was Brent Manary and Christopher Rich?
Christopher, right?
Christopher, yes.
Yeah, both of us were requiring the justice of the peace for us to access the court to begin the private prosecution. There was no mention within that notice to Sherry of the Manary case. It was two people that were requiring access to that courthouse at that time. Is that correct?
Yes.
When we went into the courthouse and we were called in, that it was available to us, what did Sherry first do? Who did she call to come up?
She called me up first.
She called you to come up first. Whose name was first on the letter, the notice that we gave to her out from the lobby that was written to her?
Was Brent. Was Christopher.
That's right. My name was first on there, and Brent of the Manary Ferry. And with that third communication notice, what also accompanied the two documents that show the correct people that she's dealing with, our correct identification. Was that identification asked for when you were called before Sherry then to lay the information down?
Yes.
And she read it onto the record?
Yes.
Did she swear you under oath or affirmation that everything you claim there today is to be true?
Yes.
Yes. So this was all being recorded. Prior to us leaving the courtroom, did Sherry ever call my name to come up?
No, she did not.
Did she end all the court actions surrounding us being brought in there? Did she basically end that process once you finished speaking?
Yes.
Because on the 18th of September, you were going to be in court to address with the Crown all these appearances where you appeared incorrectly. They were bringing you in to set a trial date. That's what ultimately that this was for. This is a pre-trial hearing.
Yes.
Who accompanied you into the courtroom that day on the 18th?
Christopher.
I did, but did we also have?
Yeah, we had quite a crowd of people, maybe 15 people for public support. He sent everybody out. We asked if it was a public courthouse or a private courthouse. He said this is private.
It's a private court. And we have this all recorded, correct?
Yes.
That's right, and we have the transcript that we've showed people. We had prepared a notice to the man or the woman that was wearing the robe, and we were correcting the record of the correct appearance of who the man was before them, and you provided the ID, did you not?
Yes.
And did Walter acknowledge that he received that?
Yes.
Yes, so he knew who he was dealing with, the man known as Brent of the Manary family. He accepted that documentation. We were also addressing the jurisdiction of the court, right? That the jurisdiction was incorrect. It erred right from the beginning, and we were addressing that. And what did Walter do when we were addressing that?
He eventually left.
He eventually left the court.
Yes.
And we addressed it at least 3 times the jurisdiction, as the transcript will show.
Yes.
So he, basically it's called abandoning ship. He left his bench at one point. And what were you told at the court window?
The court clerk said she didn't think it was being recorded.
She said it wasn't being recorded.
She wasn't sure if it was being recorded.
It wasn't being recorded. And did we find out later on whether that was being recorded or not, other than the recording that we acquired?
No, we didn't find out.
But we did learn that through the transcript, when you did receive the transcript, what did the transcript show from that day?
It showed transcripts of conversation after we had left.
After we had left.
After Walter had came back when we had left.
So we had already left. And we had given the court the notice ahead of time, establishing our capacity and that we did not consent to the jurisdiction of the court, and we had challenged it. Is that not correct?
Yes.
And what did they proceed to do?
Set a trial date for December 3rd.
So Walter ignored all the notice that was given to him honorably, and he proceeded regardless to set a trial date.
Yes.
Okay. That was on September the 18th.
Yes.
After we left the court that day, what has transpired since then?
So we have got more fines. We have contacted Sherry for a transcript from the 17th. We've been completely ignored. Supposedly judicial review, she has squashed us, will not release the transcript from the 17th.
So that everyone's clear, on the 17th, that's when you were in the Superior Courthouse. You were accessing it to which you were brought under oath or affirmation. You were there to lay the information. It is that information, that transcript, that court recording is what you were seeking as part of the Manary court file as evidence, correct?
Yes.
Right. And you were denied from Sherry having that audio being provided after multiple attempts to acquire it, communications.
Yes.
What happened just before the week that you went to court?
Just before the court date is when the ministry, it's unannounced, it's in the morning, we're in the house, my daughter and my granddaughter are there with us. All of a sudden, very quickly into the laneway comes a ministry truck, and it is followed by police cruisers.
How many?
There are 3 of them. 2 of them come right up to the house. One comes halfway. One is still at the road. All the officers are out of the vehicles, and they're at the house. Brent immediately goes outside.
I have my recorder in the truck, which is at the far end of the barn. I run to get that.
Yeah, my daughter, luckily,
our pregnant daughter runs out to interject them to hold them off until I can get there.
Did you see your pregnant daughter?
Yeah,
my pregnant daughter.
Yeah, she's very pregnant. We have the discussion who's going to go out, and she says that she'll go outside, and I had to stay inside with my granddaughter. She's only a year, a little bit over a year old, and it was a little bit cool, not too bad. So Brent runs. I could see he's going. I knew he was going through the recorder. 2 of the ones whose forms we had got, these are the individuals who have now come on the property this day. We recognize them. It's a Jeff Kwan.
Jeff Kwan and Chris Chu.
And Chris Chu are inspectors that had been on the farm before.
So they show up with the, how many OPP
they show
officers
up
were
with
there?
three OPP officers.
So there's 5 men that are on your property.
Yeah.
And you're in the house.
Yeah,
right now, we have the video of all this that we're showing everyone.
Brent runs to, because we've learned we better get some kind of recording of what's going on, because obviously what's going to come later on is not what really happened. So I knew Brent was going to get a recording. I thought it was important that I get a video of what was going on. It was very intimidating. We're caught off guard. We're kind of on the run. They're very forceful when they're coming at us. The ministry is basically, they're going to do an inspection. They want, even though we hold no license, we are not in any kind of tobacco program. This is September of, this is 9 months after we have no license with them. They're coming on the property, and they want to basically go through all our buildings and barns for their personal inspection. Really intimidating. The police are, you can see in the video, and in Brent, we're trying to tell them they have no rights. They have no jurisdiction over our property, and we ask them to leave. We ask them to go back to the road. If there's something they want, we can talk there. They're trespassing. The police basically are telling us that they're there to make sure that these guys get an inspection done, is I guess how they're presenting. We're being told that if we're almost threatened, that if we don't allow them to do their inspection, we will suffer consequences because these men have the right to come on our property.
To violate our property.
To buy it, yeah. And
So can you just go back now? So you're in the house with your granddaughter,
yeah.
right? And then so what did you use to go out to
I
record
have
them?
an iPad, which I do a little bit of pictures of my granddaughter with, so I have to physically carry her. I don't put a jacket or anything on her.
Right.
I'm kind of thinking I'm going to
The
protect.
short of it is she's got
I've got a
unfortunately, we don't have a picture of her. She's got our granddaughter in one arm, an iPad in the other, and the inspector was standing right in her face screaming at her that she's got to back up and
He's
let
coming at me saying that,
into our barn.
yeah, if I don't, it's not that Brent, it'll be me. He's going to come after me.
And who was the man that said
This
Jeff
is
Kwan?
Jeff Kwan.
This is Jeff Kwan, so we have this on the record.
Yeah, he's coming at me, telling me that, trying to tell me that he wants me to understand that he's coming after me, Kathy. He's gonna take Kathy, and I'm quite shaky. Luckily, another one of our daughters is there, so she's trying to help us because we don't know what to do. We know that
We know to stand their ground.
we know to
tell
try. We're trying to stand our ground and to stop them from bullying us, but
And how did you do that, Brent? How did you understand
you
the
keep
honorable way
saying-
to do
yeah, you
that?
keep-
Was that from our conversations
That
that we
was,
had?
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
learned a lot from you. How to stand there. Don't hit them. Be honorable. Stand your ground
That's right.
and tell them you're trespassing.
No,
The
that's
word trespassing was used 47 times in 24 minutes.
and it should have only been used once.
Should have been used once. The police didn't care. The police were nose to nose with me, and that is an uncomfortable space for me. So I would step back half a step to honorably talk to somebody without breathing, smelling their breath, and all five would come ahead, just like soldiers.
Right.
They had this plan after we watched the video once, and we were so
it's still very
So,
upsetting, even to talk about
just
it.
to talk
It's
about
upsetting.
it
It's upsetting.
is upsetting.
Yeah.
You can see afterwards they had this whole thing planned, the way the police cruisers were all set, where they stood in association with their police cruisers, and they were videoing it from their cruisers. And they were bound and determined they were going in our barn.
There's, I think,
They were gonna-
Jeff, just even while we're trying to say, you show us any kind of documentation where you have jurisdiction here, and he doesn't even acknowledge that we have any right or anything. He just even at one point, well, I'm going to make my inspection, and it's very upsetting when, we work hard. We've worked hard our whole lives. We're trying to own this property, and we get up every morning early and we work hard every day so that someday I'll be able to pass this on to my next generation. And here's a guy who just comes and wow, it's scary even just because the police were there and the police were siding with them and saying, you have to do this, you have to let them in. They have the right. And so we would ask the police, do they have the right? Like, show me where they have the right to do this. And that police officer just said, they have the right. They're the ministry. They're inspectors. They have the right. Well, yeah.
And what do you know now about who has rights and who has duties and
We
obligations?
have all the rights.
That's right.
We were right that whole 24 minutes.
Right.
We were right. They even called 911 to have, and the guy at the other end said, well, he just passed me off. We'll look into it. I said, are you going to send somebody out? Nope. I said, is there going to be a file? Yep. Well, can I get access to that? You'll have to call Freedom of Information, which is a joke because we did that. We got 100 pages that are all black. So what is the point?
And you have to pay for that, right?
What is right? The freedom of information is supposed to be for the freedom of information, not for what they want to give us.
So after this, which people are going to view how it ended, did they get access to your barn at the end of the day?
No, they did not get access
We-
to anything. We
we-
stood our ground.
we stood
We
our
basically physically stood our ground. So my daughter, pregnant anyway, little Amira, me, my granddaughter, my other daughter, and Brent, we basically formed a line. As they advanced, we would try to keep them back. It was,
Very traumatic.
After
And they
very, very upsetting. After the 911
I'm
call
shaking
is
right now
made,
thinking about it.
yeah, after the 911 is made, the police kind of stand back. They are called. The one officer goes to his car, so the 911 must have called him or whatever. But at that point, that's when they stand back. That's when we're told we're going to be fined. We're going to be held, given offense notices, and
For what? For standing our ground.
for not allowing them to basically march around and look for something. I
Well,
guess
not allowing them to trespass on our property.
trespass and.
And you also placed another call, correct? The people here on the phone. Who did you also call?
I also called you.
Right. Unfortunately, you got my answering machine, and
Yeah.
I hadn't been there, but you carried yourself wonderfully. That every man and woman should truly see how a man honorably protects his property, and you have demonstrated you understand the difference between rights and the duties and obligations that these people have do not trump the rights of a man or a woman. So what happened after that, after they left, and it was very upsetting, we immediately, that's when that fourth communication was sent off to Thomas at the OPP.
Yes.
That's correct. And then it was after that, that's when we received that communication from McGee, I believe is the last name, I don't know the first, stating that, oh, we're sorry to hear about your concerns that you have. Meanwhile, this very traumatizing, and it's an act of terrorism that's actually occurring against you, your right to not self-govern on your own property. And that communication went out immediately. And to this day, have you had a contact or a call, even when you went back to Thomas after that man sent the communication to find out what's going on here?
Nothing.
He's done nothing. So after that happened, we began, the court filings had already been in the paper. What happened after that then? Did you receive any more communications surrounding liens? Because I don't think we've talked about the liens.
No, we have a lien on our bank account. They've now put a lien on our farm, our property, because the Ministry of Finance clarified that for unpaid fines, which are bogus to begin with.
Right, as an act of intimidation.
Yes.
And what has happened with the drivers that were involved in this since the last, it's almost 12 months?
Well, from the seed loads in Quebec, we've just got verification a couple of days ago. They have now been fined, not the owners of the vehicles, but the drivers themselves. One for each got fined $9,000 and $1.25 million for transporting illegal products.
So these drivers, have they received their property restored to them, their trucks?
No.
So they've had their trucks for the last almost 12 months.
Yes, 12 months.
12 months they've had their trucks.
Yeah.
And how has that affected these? Have you used these drivers before? Have you dealt with these people? And have you ever had any problems with them?
No.
Never. Could you quickly reiterate, I believe one of the drivers you mentioned was asked to go and sit with the RCMP, and he said, correct me if I'm wrong, his name is Jim, the one driver. Did he not sit with
that's not a driver.
That driver. Jim is the agent for the buying company that bought our tobacco.
Oh, I see, from RR Global.
From R&R Global.
So could you just clarify to the people what he had said to you about his meeting with the RCMP?
He had sat with them, with the Quebec police and a member of the RCMP for 7.5 hours.
Now, was that under his own action that he went to go and see them, or was he ordered or asked to come in?
He was requested.
He was requested to come in.
And he voluntarily went.
Okay.
And they interrogated him for 7.5 hours.
7.5 hours.
Yeah.
This is way back. This is a long time
This is
ago.
quite a few months ago, but he sat with them for 7.5 hours, answered their questions honorably, and basically they were trying to get him to say there was something wrong with us.
That you were doing something illegal,
Yeah,
like you were selling contraband or
That we were
something.
selling contraband,
yes.
or that the drivers or the trucking companies were doing something wrong.
Right. And how did that end with Jim? Did he sign any documentations? Did he just
He
leave?
did not sign anything with them. He wrote up his own record of what happened that day and submitted it to them. They offered their version for him to sign, and he read 2 lines that I'm not signing any of that. It was not correct at all.
Okay, so that's great that we've clarified that. We're going to go back to the court that was filed on September the 17th, that we filed the statement of claim. So people know at home, they have 21 days. You can read the claim as it's been posted on the site here. The wrongdoers had 21 days to respond. Did any of the wrongdoers respond in 21 days?
No, they did not.
No. So at that point, that is when we, a man or woman, we move our court in that forward, correct?
Yes.
And in that process, we are still working on final documents and that so that we ensure that when this court does move forward that we have all our ducks in a row. Is that correct?
Yes.
In the meantime, you've also received further trespasses and threats in communications. Can you explain what that has been about with the lien?
Yeah.
So now there were fines issued on the day when they came with all that force, and when we didn't allow them on the property, there were fines handwritten by Jeff Kwan thrown on the ground, so we were served them. From that, now because we did not pay those fines, they have now issued liens against our property and
against our farm.
Against the farm. So they issued the other fines are for not filling out the paperwork, which I said earlier. We also have fines against us, which they have liens against bank accounts, which they have not pushed. The money has not left the bank account, but they have the paper showing they have the power to do it. No one ever said what they did was right or wrong. Just all of a sudden, we now have statements saying that they have claims against us, how they've got them. I mean, we've never had a chance to argue our side or say why I haven't filled out the forms. I mean, I don't belong. I don't have the license. If I don't have the license, I don't have to fill out the forms.
That's right.
But they have issued the fines against us, and are now leaning against our property, are going to slowly, I guess, start to lean against our property. We're not sure how big of fines they're going to lean. I mean, they could probably swallow up the whole farm by continuing to come up with these liens of things that they're saying we did or didn't do, and no one is talking to us. We're trying to get some kind of communication. It's like we don't even exist. It's all our stuff, and it's been the whole time has been like we don't exist. It's our crop. It's our tobacco. I mean, they just took it, and nobody even called me to say, we've taken your tobacco. The only correspondence that we've had was from the truckers. I mean, that's who told us that our stuff is, our property is gone.
But you did receive one communication from a man by the name called Gary.
Yes.
And he's under the control of Doug. Is it Doug?
Doug.
Of Doug. So when you received that letter, what was that letter stating? It was also first written to the registrar at the court, right?
Yeah, and that's a week before we even get a copy of it.
That's something.
They've already sent a copy to the courthouse, basically saying that we are frivolous and vexatious.
With your claim that
With
you
our
filed in
claim,
the
the
court.
claim that we have is frivolous and vexatious, and they want
Hang on a second.
St. Thomas to remove it.
It's important that you remember, as we're working through this process, I'm teaching you the
I'm
words.
trying to teach the right words.
Right, you use the right words, so it's not a they that's doing this, right?
Yeah.
Who wrote the letter to you?
Yeah, this Gary.
Right. Does Gary have any standing
We
in this
don't even
matter?
know who Gary is. I've never spoke to Gary. My correspondences that we have sent are not with Gary. So this is somebody out of the blue who is now coming and trying to remove our property.
Right. He's trying to act against you, trespass.
Yeah, he's trespassing against us even before he even notified us or talked to me or anything. He already said this a week ago to the court, telling him, that we're frivolous and vexatious and throw it out.
That's right. Now, did I mention to you both before we filed the claim at what this system that we have out here and how it is going to attack you, that once you get your paperwork into the courtroom and you establish your common law court and claim, and how they're going to do everything to do what once it's in there? Throw it out, right? So this is what this communication was to get this. He was requesting of the court clerk to remove this file because it was frivolous and vexatious. And he also stated that it was not following under the rules of civil procedure, correct? Which you now know is part of the legal world. Rules of civil procedure not apply to a man or a woman when you're moving your court in law, correct?
That's correct.
Right. So immediately, how did we address that situation?
You go to court, find out if it's out of the
we,
file.
We sent a letter to the court, to the registrar, saying that Gary has no standing, and
he's trespassing.
To remove, he's trespassing on a case, and to remove his file.
Right, and to restore your property.
Yes.
Right, to its correct standing, because the notices that are within your filing, as everybody can read, clearly establish the jurisdiction, establish who's involved in this,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Gary is not involved in this. He's not in charge of everybody. So this is how we stop lawyers and that from interjecting or trying to trespass upon your case.
Yeah.
So when you sent this document off to the court staff, and I just want to be on the record, the court staff, I've been around courts all across Ontario, the court staff out at the St. Thomas court they're super people there. They're really nice,
Yes,
you know, and we realize that there's a foundational problem here that's going on here, that they're doing the best that they can within their job capacity, but they have also been lied to with this truth, and now they're being shown it for the first time. So when you sent that communication off to the fax to address this letter that came from Gary, what were you told when you got to the courthouse that actually just occurred?
They said they sent the fax off, but that our court file had been removed from the St. Thomas court. It had been transferred to a London court.
So let's get this straight. Your property, that's what your court and claim is,
My
that you paid money for into that public course for it to be protected there by the court staff. It has now been removed and it was sent to London.
Yes.
And who did they send it to in London?
Linda Templeton.
Templeton. And do you know a Linda Templeton before now? Who originally ordered this to be, because you mentioned on the phone, the communication everyone's hearing that was occurring when you're in front of Kim, the court clerk, that she was surprised by the look on her face when she was, as we're hearing her talking on the phone. What was it she was being told that surprised her?
She's been told that Scott Campbell from St. Thomas had transferred the file to London, to Templeton.
To Templeton.
And by the look on her face, that was very unexpected for her to hear that.
Correct. And then you were further being audible because this is all new to you, as everybody understands. You had asked somebody else, I believe, I don't think it was Kim, but correct me if I'm wrong, if you needed to see your case file. What did you ask her that you'd have to do?
It was still Kim. I said, well, how do I access my file? I want to view it. Well, you have to go to 80 Dundas Street in London to view the file that I put in
your local public courthouse.
In front of her weeks ago.
Did we or did we not establish the Manary court?
Yes, we did.
Did we or did we not establish a common law court?
Yes.
Yes. So they have these people that are honorably working, whether they're wearing black robes or the bailiffs or the front end administrative staff. Do these people have any jurisdiction, which means control, over your property? No, but they are
They're
charged.
supposed to protect it.
That's right. The duty is to make sure that there's no shenanigans going on within your filing. You've made crystal clear that the next court meeting is going to be a public process hearing so that the public can all come out and they can all bear witness that this is going to be a lawful court that's moving, proceeding, that the Manary court is moving lawfully. We're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to do anything privately. We're not doing anything underhandedly. Everything is open and in front of the world here, is it not?
Yes.
Okay. If you can just speak to the people of this process that you've been through all your lives, how has this affected your life and how are you feeling today in moving forward?
Well, feel like we've been dragged through the mud. Everybody's attacking us, and all we are is hardworking people, like most people in Canada. We just want to make a living, and these people are dragging us through the mud. We didn't know what to do. We know what's right. That's why me and my daughter went to court ourselves, because we knew we were right. We had not done anything wrong. Nobody would listen. So we had to find people that would help us. Now that we've got Christopher helping us, doing it right, and the right way is a lot easier than the lying and the cheating that they're doing, we now see a possible light that we're going to share this with everyone. Because
this is a vehicle in which we can show everybody that what's going on honorably in our country and the solution, the remedy, and moving forward and having this conversation, which has never happened, to seek and ensure that this is never happening to anybody else again.
Yeah, and I think that's like the violation against us and our family and now our property, and it's hard. It's hard to exist even on a any-day basis. This whole thing is just draining the life right out of us, and it's hard because you try to do stuff, you try to do it right, you work really hard, and it just seems like there's nothing we can do. There's just nothing. It's like we don't exist. It's like we're the ones that have done all the violations, but when you try to talk to somebody or ask or anything, it's like nobody even wants to listen to us. you can walk into these courts and this whole other world that I guess now we've learned about, and it's like we don't exist. They just are running right over top of us, and they just do whatever they want, and they seem to know the name of the game, and we don't know it. So the light for us is the fact that now we realize that we do have rights, that as a man and a woman, we can work hard, and what is ours is ours. And we're finding that this is an avenue for us to say, no, stop it, stop bullying us, stop pushing us, stop taking from us. Treat us fair, treat me right. I mean, you don't sleep at night. You don't do anything anymore because you're just so afraid, and so we don't know where to turn. So we're going through the process. The process is not done yet. The process is getting very hard. We're trying to learn. I really know I have been taught my whole life of a whole different system, to bow down and obey. The government is good and the police are always right. And I've lived a year of realizing that that is not the situation. And we know we're right. I mean, we know what we've done is, we're trying to get out of it. Are we going to get out of it? I believe there is light at the end of the tunnel in the way that we are doing it now. Definitely there are people listening. The fact that we're being intimidated and threatened, and somebody knows something's up. And so will we get out the other end? We'll stay together. We'll fight this, because I do believe it is important that I have rights. I think it's important, right?
Yes, we have rights. We just didn't know we did.
Yeah.
We were told we didn't.
Yeah.
Like everyone else. And I want to be on the record that when I met both of you, I've made a commitment to both of you, have I not?
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
definitely.
Right?
100%.
Yeah.
That I am not going to allow these people to do this to you.
Yeah.
Right? That's my duty. And I'm just as liable. If anything that I put in writing, that everyone reads all the forms and communications, all those communications, yes, Brent's thumb is on it. So we've read them together so he understands it, but they were all authored and created by me to ensure that the wording is correct, because that is the game that is being played with these people that are part of the bar.
Yeah.
It's a game of words which they play, and you take them out of it very quickly using the most powerful words, property and trespass. And now you both understand how to access the courthouse correctly, how to communicate correctly, and under all this enormous stress and duress that you're under, that you're carrying. You're not just carrying it for yourselves, you're carrying this weight for all of this country, because this is a truth that's going to be brought to the light, because this has to stop. And we are going to see to it that it stops, and we're going to do it honorably. And I would hope that every man and woman looking at this out there today, that to come back to this website often, because we are going to post when we are going to be holding this public process hearing, when our next court appearance is going to be. And we ask of all the people out there who can to show up at this courthouse when that date is for you.
Support.
We all have to support one another. Yeah. And it's only through this collective coming together and conversation that we're going to correct this process. Because we do believe that these people, even Doug Downey, you believe just as you've been lied to all your life, so has he.
Yeah, I believe,
you know that now.
Yeah, I have.
And it's the same with whether it's Linda, who's acting as the Chief Justice for the region of specific region on Ontario, or if it's Scott Clark or any of these other people that are working honorably in these public courthouses. Yeah. Everyone has been lied to, and this is ultimately what we're bringing out into the light. And we have the evidence, and we're able to show this powerfully and quickly. This is what's going on, and we do believe, and we have faith in our fellow man. It's going to turn around.
Yeah, somebody has to be accountable. You can't do what they do and not be accountable. If I were to do what they do to what's been done to us, I would be held accountable. You can't do harm another individual and steal from them and not be accountable. You can hide and say you didn't know. We've sent enough letters and try to have enough communications that we're trying to say, like, you know, we exist and we're not going to bow down. We've got to a point, I'm not going to bow down. And I've had enough. I've had enough. It's time to fight for our rights.
Well, I thank you very much, both of you, for being here. I know this was, so everyone knows for the record that there was nothing preconceived from this conversation. Kathy was also, she didn't want to do this video, but I have stressed with her the importance in bringing this truth so that they put a face on these two wonderful people who I've met. They're no different than your brothers, your sisters, your mother, your father, your grandparents. They have love in their hearts. They've done no wrong or harm to any man or woman, and yet they've been attacked by people that are supposed to be providing simply services to help us with our businesses to make this country what it was great. And I thank you both for being here today.